going on? My name is JuanCarlos Pena. I'm a student here at Jones Technical Institute. Today we're going to be doing a video on connecting an AC manifold gauge set onto a vehicle. I don't have a semi-truck tractor to work on, but I've got this 1992 Nissan 300ZX, and we're going to check the pressures on it, see where the freon level's at, see if I've got a leak in the system. These manifold gauge sets, they go for about, I don't know, 80-90 bucks at the, I hear a B. Okay, so these manifold gauge sets are about 80-90 bucks at your local car parts store, Advanced AutoZone, Napa. I think these we got from Napa, I'm not 100% sure. But alright, so anyways, let's just get into it. It's good for quick diags. So you're gonna hang your manifold gauge set up on usually on the hood latch. That's a good spot to connect them. These most of these manifolds have a little retaining spot to hang the heads on them. The system, the AC system, is always going to have a high side and a low side. Okay. This one right here, I only have a cap on one of them, and you can see it's full of debris. So I would actually, if we were going to service this vehicle right now, I would get some new caps for it, and I might replace this valve because this valve actually looks real dirty. But this is the red. It's usually going to be the high. If it's not color coded, it'll usually have an H on the top of them. Put this in my pocket so I don't lose it. Also, you'll see that there's a difference in diameter on these two ports. Now, before you go to connect your manifold to it, you got to make sure that this stuff is cleaned out so you don't get debris in the system itself. Okay, so we have our hot. Another thing that we're going to check out is we have to make sure that this knob right here is turned all the way to open. You can see how this screws down and in it, and what that does is it pushes this pin in, and it pushes into the to the valve itself, and that's how we get our pressures on it. Okay, so you have to make sure that it's all the way out. Cool, no big deal. And then you're going to pull the quick release coupling up, connect it, and that's secured on there, right, latched on. Okay, and then you do the same thing for your low side. Pull it off the manifold there. See, and this one was screwed all the way in, so that would have been bad. All right, and then you're going to connect. Boom. Okay. Next thing that you're going to do is you're going to come over here. Make sure that these are completely closed, because these are the blow-offs for the system to recirc. Usually a third hose would be here connected to our refrigerant tank. So if we were going to evac the system, you know, you'd open this up and you just let all that freon go back to the recovery tank, and then you would close them up, and you would hook up the refrigerant supply in there to make the pressure go back in the other way, and you would open it up, and that's how you would fill your system here. Okay. So, but for our test here, we're going to be doing a static pressure test, and all that means is we're going to open these valves up, and we're going to see what pressure we're reading at right now while the system is off. Right now the freon in the system has already moved between the evaporator and the condenser and the accumulator, and it's trying to level itself out to find a good sitting spot for the freon itself. Okay, so what we do is we look at our manifold gauge, and we're going to just kind of crack this valve until we get some movement out of our gauge here. All right, so it looks like our low side is at about 70, 72, give or take. And then we come over to our high side, same thing. Open this valve up. until we reading off of this. Okay, and it looks like that's at about 75. 75 on the high, 70 on the low. My tech paper here tells me that my low is supposed to be at 32 to 39.1, and my high pressure is supposed to be 195 to 237. Now right now on the static test, it's not really going to give me a whole lot. This test I would usually use to make sure I don't have a leak in the system. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let this idle for about 5 minutes, and I'm going to make sure that these pressures don't drop. That's going to be a good leak test for the system. So we're going to go ahead and pause right now, and we'll be back in about 5 minutes. Okay. All right, so 5 minutes have elapsed. We're still sitting at about 70 on that gauge, still sitting about 75 there. So our next, we know that that there's not a leak in the system. It's holding the pressure. The pressures aren't exactly where we want them at, but we're going to crank the car up, and we're going to see what our pressure's at. Okay, so now I've got my temperature set to the lowest that it can go, and I have my blower set to the highest setting that it's got. Now we're going to go back to our gauges, and we're going to see what we've got going on. So our low side is showing 10 on the low side, and I've got I don't know, we'll call it 120 or so on our high side. Now going back to our paper, we're supposed to be having, like I said, about 32 on the low and high 195. So I would say that this is in need of a recharge on it, because this pressure should be up here by the 30, and this high pressure should be up here about 225-ish. Okay, so I would diagnose this as low on Freon. That's most likely why I'm not getting the cooling efficiency that I should be getting on here. I ran it through the heater. The heat's working, so the heater core itself is working. The coolant passing through is blowing off the residual heat like it's supposed to. And I guess that would be that'd be it for our manifold testing. Now the next thing that I would do is I'd hook up an actual AC machine and recover the Freon that's in it, and go ahead and get this Freon back up to charge. And after doing that, we would have to hook up our the AC machine itself has its own gauges, so we'll be able to make sure that those pressures are indeed where they're supposed to be. Okay, so anyways, moving on to the next part. I'm not even going to shut off the vehicle for this part here, but basically you're going to unscrew these, right, so that pin in there comes off of that valve. Is just going right. So now it's completely safe to go ahead and disconnect without the risk of Freon evacuating out into the atmosphere. And then you're going to go ahead and push this back onto your manifold gauge so that you don't damage the heads. We're going to unscrew this other port, disconnect it. You see how it didn't have no hiss, no nothing. That means all the Freon stayed intact in there. My system isn't any lower than what it was before. It's still low, needs a recharge. But that's all for our video today. Thank you for viewing.